Welcome to Estonian General Intelligence Podcast. Today we have a great pleasure of welcoming Ambassador Tanel Sepp to the podcast. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
It's such a great pleasure to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. As I was preparing to our topics, I saw so many different areas to cover. But before we dive in, maybe a good way to start would be that rather than me reading your official posts and LinkedIn update over here, that maybe if you would go with your own words through the background and then keeping in mind kind of the topics of the cyber diplomacy, the diplomacy in general, the digital society topics, and also kind of coming AI, AGI world. And kind of bringing out what have been major inflection points or kind of your eye-opening or really focus-shifting points in the past as well.
All right.
I know I'm not asking much.
There were quite many questions here. But about me first. I've been Estonian diplomat for over 20 years now. And this is basically the only thing I've been doing in my professional life. I started at the foreign ministry in 2003 and quickly I went to my first foreign posting to Luxembourg. And then I was a bit again in Tallinn, then to Brussels, afterwards to Kabul, Washington, Addis Ababa. And with these postings and also my years in the headquarters in Tallinn, I've been covering quite different topics. I actually started my career at the foreign ministry at the EU negotiations task force. However, I joined that task force when the negotiations had just concluded. But then we really had to work out how Estonia had to kind of interact within the EU different bodies, how to prepare different decisions and so forth. So it was still quite interesting, and for a beginner diplomat or debutant diplomat, it was quite fascinating thing to do. But if we come to kind of cyber questions, then I actually started dealing with digital and cyber topics more when I was posted in DC, in Washington DC, and I was there as deputy ambassador. And at one point, I realized that cyber questions were the ones that would open doors for me. In DC, you have almost all the world's countries there with their embassies. Everybody wants attention. And then you had to kind of work with their niche topics to make sure that you get the meetings. And I went to DC, that was in 2012. And then I got my first kind of cyber lecture from a colleague who's actually right now our ambassador to the US, Ambassador Christian Brick. So he was then also at the embassy, but on a lower level. And he gave me my first briefing, and that's how it started. I think I profited also from having graduated also from NO high school in Estonia, which is kind of science-based school. So I was also studying programming there. Well, I'm so old that nobody uses these programming languages anymore, but at least I had some kind of logical thinking that kind of fits this kind of world. So, and from there on, I've been dealing with cyber questions. After my posting in DC, I got a job also at the Ministry of Defense, at the Cyber Policy Department. And I went there to really build up the international engagements for the defense sector. And then I had a small gig in between in Addis Ababa, and then I came back to cyber.
Quite an interesting path. And also the different areas. And in past discussions, we've also covered the topic of kind of different perspectives, how people see the world. They see the digitalization, they see the cyber topics, they see the the general technological advancements and coming AI and everything like this. And I would really kind of love to dive in as well. In addition to the fact that in the cyber and the cybersecurity topics, definitely the last 20 years have seen quite significant change, and especially the last few years. And if you would have to kind of characterize the view or the approach, from the U.S. side, and then Brussels view, and then Kabul, and then working with African Union, and we'll leave the Estonian view as the last one. And that just the approaches, main focus areas, what are good things to keep in mind when having the discussions?
Well, I guess that the first thing is that the whole kind of palette of all the different questions that we need to talk about digitalization or cybersecurity, this palette has widened immensely. And I do believe that also our political masters, our ministers, and higher level officials are now also understanding better where are the links. For Estonia, it's quite clear. I mean, cybersecurity, it's a vital question to us because we're dependent on our digital solutions. And if these do not work, the government cannot function. So there's a clear correlation there. With many these major hacks and different cyber attacks, I do believe that many countries are at the same kind of point now. We were simply lucky, I would say, with 2007 attacks that this kind of nationwide attacks happened so early.
Mm-hmm.
And I always have to, not always, but quite often I have to correct some people who think that our digitalization path started from 2007. No, it already started from 90s. But what it really pointed out was the need really to focus also on cybersecurity. Now, from different perspectives, from different places. Well, I'll start from the kind of I start from Kabul that had least to do with cybersecurity or digitalization. But even when I was there in 2009 until 11, and it was the time of the surge of ISAF forces, so Afghanistan was really at the center of news also. And then we tried to organize a project at the Afghan parliament. We were proposing to digitalize the voting participation system there, just to bring more kind of transparency to that body. And we're working with some donors because these kind of projects are too big for Estonia to do alone. And I almost had everything ready for that. I had Ignorance Academy ready to partner with us and kind of implement this. And also donors lined up. But then there were some additional big kind of bomb attacks. And then the donors were kind of reconsidering what to support and with a kind of excuse that actually we should spend money to some other fields like security and education. I lost the funds, so I never got to do that project. But it shows that even in these kind of places, there are opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the U.S., well, the whole kind of cybersecurity development in the U.S. has been immense. And I would say that the biggest aspect that I need to kind of think about on almost daily basis is actually not about the cybersecurity nor digitalization, but how in Europe, actually globally, we are dependent on U.S. companies and these primes. And I was thinking at one point, especially in the kind of Ukraine context, where we've been working a lot with Ukraine to kind of assist them to keep up with the resilience, because the war also happens in cybersecurity. So I've been really thinking that Ukraine shows clearly how today we need to kind of reconsider the public-private partnership, this kind of interaction with the private sector, because we have right now government that gets assistance directly from the private sector, and we're talking about government in war. We have private sector that also gives a lot of information, and we're relying more and more information on from the private sector, especially in our intelligence communities. And also we have private sector that migrates or stores sovereign data. So Ukraine is kind of black and white situation. There's no question, moral ethics, it's all good. But if we think about kind of future conflicts that might not be so black and white, and if we think that with the Ukraine context, we have already elevated expectations, both from the government's and private sector side, then we need to kind of really talk about this. We need to think what this partnership looks like in the future. I have to say that was my thinking before we saw also more kind of aggressive U.S. Administration's policies on tariffs, on the use of technology or access to technology, as well as Elon Musk's role in the government. So that kind of changes, gives another layer to these expectations. But I think fundamentally we still need to talk about this. So I'm missing now Africa. Africa, digitalization, and cybersecurity. There we have completely another picture. All the African countries are digitalizing to a certain extent. And in Estonia, kind of being part in this Western world, I think quite often we have this misconception of thinking that Africa is somewhere really, really behind. No, it's not. Especially if we talk about mobile services, where they have found some really cool solutions that we are learning from them now. Or African countries also trying to build up their databases, trying to start using AI and all other things. What was really what I really found very cool was one project that we did in Africa. When I went there, it was a COVID time, and Estonia had already organized the global hack to find some solutions for in kind of COVID environment. And from the European Union side, there was an idea to organize also a European African hackathon. And I knew that we had the experience already. And then I proposed that, okay, we can do it. So in the end, I was actually raising funds myself. I got Estonian hackathon team together. And then we had Smart Africa partnering with us. And the whole idea of the hackathon was to have Smart Africa to define the challenges that we need to solve, and then to bring together African and European youth communities and have mixed teams together solving these African challenges. And the big point was to really have this knowledge and experience exchange, and also African Union, for example, in Addis Ababa, has this big slogan: African solutions to African problems. That's what we try to do. We try to really get the African defined challenges, and then add on our expertise to kind of to widen the possibilities of finding cool solutions. And we did that for 2 years. And what was really inspiring was how enthusiastic and knowledgeable also and skillful the African youth was. We also organized a kind of online conference with that. We had the CEO of Smart Africa there, our president, Kalulait was there, and many other speakers. So these are kind of moments that keep inspiring me, actually.
Yes, that actually resonates quite a bit with my experience in Africa as well. That this discussion that they're behind, I would say that it's a completely different situation, and I would say that there is some similarities to where we were in the beginning of the 90s. That the whole world was open to us, that we had definitely high need to digitalize fast or to start governing fast. We chose the path of digitalization. That opened kind of just another vector for us to dive in deep. But I do see some similarities over there, that there is an opportunities to utilize digitalization, and not digitalization the way we Estonians think about it, of doing the systems, but actually modern technologies, the mobile solutions, the AI solutions, and things like this, and kind of frog leap the rest of the world in the utilization of the modern technology. And desire is there. There is a lot of young talent, in my experience, and there's a lot of coordination. And they also see a lot of perspectives from the different areas, as they work very closely with Americans, as they work very closely with Europeans, they work very closely with Asians, and from that the point, it's kind of interesting to see the developments in different countries. In my opinion, you're looking skeptical.
No, I'm not skeptical, but I do think that we do need to keep in mind also the digital divide, which is still there. Simply the possibilities, the available resources are different. And even today, when I go to New York to the UN meetings, digital divide is one of these topics, and that is why African, Asian, Latin American countries are constantly talking about capacity building. That they need extra capacity, and what I'm concerned about is that with the whole kind of AI revolution right now, that this gap might even widen. That we will have a larger digital gap than before. And the big question is really how to engage our global partners to make sure that they are with us, not somewhere really far away behind us.
That is definitely an interesting topic, and for me, I'm still quite optimistic from the standpoint, because I think there is also quite a bit, quite many shared experiences that can be utilized to drive the development further. And at the same time, there are also very interesting cases where the AI development and advancement has been quite beneficial. Immediately thinking about the Randa and Kinyarwanda language chatbot that enabled people, that it's not only even affecting the digital divide, but the literacy divide, that people were actually are able to call in and get the public sector services handled by just talking to a chatbot, and the different examples from that point. But also, one thing that I wanted to ask, and I understand this is close to your heart, is actually the question of trust, and how to establish trust, and how to communicate, promote, and gain trust of the systems. That my experience also, having worked and lived in the US for quite a while, having worked with the Germans for the last 2-3 years, and with the European Union, with and also living in Africa, it is interesting to see how the trust varies. The trust in the systems, the trust in technology itself, the trust in government, the trust in data, trust in people who have access to the data. And this is kind of an interesting point on how do we kind of close those gaps and have a more unified view and unified approaches on how to go forward.
Yes, trust is everything. With the digitalization, this is one of the big cornerstones on making sure that the systems that we build are sustainable, are used, and let me kind of put it in another way. And I think in Estonia we have figured out something big, and that is that we have decoupled trust towards government to trust towards government systems. I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
it's 100% perfect situation, but in overall terms, it doesn't matter what kind of government we have in place. What matters is that the e-services, all the e-governance system functions no matter what kind of government we have.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really important. And in a way, another kind of key aspect here is that it's like a kind of social contract that as Estonian citizens, we own our data, but we give it out to the government for use, and we get in return all the services. And I don't know if you also remember a couple of years ago, some 5-6 years ago, there was even kind of let's say concern amongst Estonians that we had been moving so fast with our digitalization, and at one point we didn't see any developments anymore, and people got restless. Come on, why don't you develop
Is the
further?
tiger dead?
Yes, exactly. So this shows that with a kind of years long work with the public sector, with the people in Estonia, you can get them really used to these kind of systems,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really the convenience part, also for people, and that creates kind of new demand for even better services. And what we have really achieved with this trust-based system is the transparency. It's kind of democratic way to govern. It really has some of this leashes also for for the people to say and see what government is doing. Even in today's news, there's a
Mm-hmm.
story about abusive use of banking information. Well, this kind of system shows immediately if there are these kind of problems, and then it is the role of the government and the parliament to fix these problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really massive thing that helps us to maintain our kind of democratic values. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would say.
Yes, I like actually kind of the dividing the trust issue in the different segments. And in my experience, having been in many discussions and promoting the Estonian e-governance story and selling the solutions and being part of the many delegations with the Estonian ICT cluster and things like this, I think the technological trust, that is an easier thing to explain because that is kind of a logical and it's more of a communication and in some cases training issue. That when you start having that, it's better to have a situation where you actually have a trace of every movement happening, every access that is taking place, that I can, as a Estonian citizen, I can look at the data, see who's been accessing my data and things like this. And because sometimes it's even anecdotal. I would go to some country, have a discussion that, technological systems, and then get a response that, oh no, we really cannot trust. We don't know what people do with this data. And my question would be, but where is your information right now? Where is your particular registry? No, it's in that room, in those folders, in those files, in those papers. And I'm like, and what kind of systems do you have about people who are actually going in and out of that room, and when they're making copies of those papers and things like this? And then it kind of opens up this discussion. So the technological trust, this is kind of an easier one. But then the next one is, and this is kind of an interesting balance point, is actually what's beyond the technological. How do the people who are actually kind of administrating and controlling and have the full access, that they are actually having the right guidelines, the right principles to utilize and use the data properly. And because this is also one of the experience that I have with working with our Western European colleagues and things like this, where it's much more immediate carefulness about digitalization. And the argument is that we have to be careful to make sure that it's used in a responsible way, that it's used in a way that nobody can, utilize it to oppress people or things like this.
I would say that the focus really needs to be on citizens. And whenever I talk to some of my foreign partners about our once only rule, then they feel so surprised. And one's only rule is basically for the government, saying that if government asks from one citizen certain set of data, then another part of the government must use already that data that is given, not ask again. I mean, all the information needs to kind of cross different boundaries of different institutions, government bodies, because government has already interacted with that citizen. So I really like this approach that we had in the 2000s, beginning of this millennia, and the whole idea was to really focus on this convenience and transparency, because what was the main gain for people was free time.
Yes.
So that you didn't have to stay in lines anywhere. You could do your things and then use your free time as well as you could. And Estonian this e-showroom, this kind of our e-solutions promotion institution, they had this nice slide also of a young family in a park. That is the goal. Of course, from the government side, yes, it is also making sure that you can govern your different social security fields or some other fields as efficiently as possible.
Absolutely.
And in that sense, we saw when we introduced our e-tax declarations how revenue increased. Because if you make it easier, people are more willing to also pay taxes, for example. So, I mean, it all started for us from that. We were poor when we regained independence, and we had to find more efficient ways. But throughout that journey, how we have really built it on trust and this interaction or social contract between the government and its people, this is something that I do believe that many countries still need to learn from.
Absolutely. And definitely the efficiency argument and the ease of use and then that kind of technological advancement and transparency, those arguments are definitely strong. But I do understand the concern of some people about the fact that if you have the full transparency and very efficient way of actually analyzing the data or segmenting certain groups of people and things like this, there can be some concerns. But for me, that's once again the question of, you have the transparency, you have the capability of actually traceability of who's been accessing what data and how those decisions have been made and things like this. So at the end of the day, you can come back. And it's also something that you're not eliminating whether you use the technology or you don't use the technology.
Look, many global partners have been trying to kind of consult with us on these issues. And what they see in Estonia, they're amazed of. But then when they want to implement anything, that one of my kind of key messages is that for any of these kind of reforms, you need to have the political will. Because at first it's going to be painful, like any reform, any change kind of management thing. It's going to be painful, but you need to go through. Because if we talk about, any country, what we're talking here about is also getting rid of corruption, for example. Like our former president said, you cannot bribe a computer. Well, we got rid of our Soviet legacy corruption with that, and we are quite kind of high ranking in terms of countries without corruption, or let's say our corruption level is low. That's what I wanted to say.
Yes.
So this is the main thing that you need to have the political leaders who will push that through and keep the government on that path. There will be hiccups. We've also had hiccups, but then you need to have this strong political leadership there. That is a really big thing. So in terms of fears of governments, or even not just governments, let's talk also about civil society. Of course, we need to kind of show how we are using the data responsibly. So again, transparency comes into play. But where I really see immense opportunities is that basically we already have kind of almost structured data society. And that is a good basis to really build new kind of AI tools and really move to this. What our government is kind of pursuing is personalized services. We have all this different data already, which really allows for personal medicine, for example, and or for kind of personalized social services. It really eases again the interaction between the people and government. So in a way, it might actually sound a bit freaky, but in a way, the government approaches people only when there are some services to be provided. And then you can choose whether to take the service or not. But especially if we talk about medicine, I think that that's the first big field where we will see a lot of different developments, even in the near future.
I remember I had an interesting discussion that was back when I was running IBM. That was 2013, 2016, so it's been quite a while. And then I was working in data and analytics working group that the government had. And I was representing Estonian ICT cluster there. And I remember a discussion with the tax agency and an experts in their data analytics team and kind of the future AI teams and things like this. And they said that it's an interesting concept that they've figured out how to collect taxes quite well and quite efficiently and automized everything, even the checks on who gets audited, who does not get audited. And back then they said that, they are really focusing on the more interesting cases where there is ambiguity in tax law. And it's more of a kind of a back and forth, a very intelligent back and forth of who utilizes the system better and who closes the loopholes faster and things like this. But the other part of that was interesting that they said that they actually have a capability of providing much better service and being much better partner to the citizens and businesses because they have the capability of actually kind of seeing into the future that with the certain payment the behaviors, if somebody's late with paying their taxes or reporting their taxes by a certain few days or things like this, or even kind of revenue streams and how are the dynamics on the revenues and tax collections and things like this, that they can actually start predicting and telling companies that if you continue on this path, there is a high risk that you will be owing us money in 6 months, in a year, or that your business will be in trouble. And it was an interesting point where they said that we have this information where we really want to share it, but we're not viewed as such partner. And that kind of changes the role that we have because whenever, you get a call from a tax agency or you get a letter from a tax agency, the first reaction is concern.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes.
This is kind of
There is
written
the trust
into our
issue.
DNA. But I think that the question here is also about communication.
Yes.
That if you are able to provide these kind of services, you need to really communicate it either to these prospective clients or even more widely. Because most of the concerns come from lack of communication.
Absolutely.
When people find out at one point that the government is doing that and that, then of course your initial reaction is also what, why, how. But if you communicate it well enough in clear, simple messages, then that always helps. Even in my job right now, with as a cyber ambassador, one of the key points for me is really to translate what is happening in cyberspace to politically understandable language. That is the key point because in the end, I don't expect my political leadership to understand all the nitty-gritty details about cyber diplomacy or cyber attacks or whatever. But I need to show the effects. Because in the end, they would have to make decisions based on these different effects. So So again, communication here is really the key.
Absolutely. I would like to talk a little bit about the balance between collaboration and sovereignty, of kind of utilizing the digital discussions and also in the cyberspace, because there is, one of the main themes of using digitalization and going in a more digital moving forward in a more digital way is how it actually enables to increase the sovereignty, the independence, the control over your own data and the services that you provide and things like this. On the other hand, we're living in a very, very connected world. And how do you balance that, or how do you see how much has the conversation actually changed during your tenure as the ambassador, and how do we balance those topics? Or even more specifically, a more specific example is that in many discussions, one of the first discussions is how do you guarantee your sovereignty? That how do you protect your registries? How do you protect your population registry, your business registry, your land registry, without which, or if these are compromised, the state is compromised. We have the data embassies solutions. Other countries have different solutions enabling that. So that's one part of how to keep it, sovereign, independent, and all of this. On the other hand, we do have these collaborations like Tallinn mechanism and other areas of collaboration. How do we keep those in balance?
Everybody goes to the cloud now. And this really seems to be the trend. The big question is what kind of cloud to pick? What's the legal framework there, also internationally? And are different risks mitigated or not? And all the main cloud providers are US companies. And obviously, everybody is thinking about the threats related also to being under at least partly under the US legal kind of jurisdiction. And the question is, how can the governments then trust that system to work as if it was their own system? Well, that was actually quite a complicated sentence now. In a way, how to make sure that your own legal system prevails. This is a more easy way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an easy question to answer, actually. What we have seen now is Microsoft or Amazon Web Services are now producing their own policies for Europe, for example. I do hope that it's not just for Europe in the end, but these kind of separate policies are also for other parts in the world. But basically, they're saying that while they try to build the sovereign cloud services, that their new policies would give extra guarantees for those who want to use them. This is really good development here, but the question is still kind of fundamental in a way. And I do believe that that some small things, but very kind of fundamental things, have changed the thinking around it. And I'll come back to the Musk's role and how at one point he kind of discontinued service for Starlinks on Ukrainian front because he was afraid of escalation of the war. If these kind of decisions can be made by just one person, then every government obviously has to be very careful in handling its own kind of sovereign data and its citizens' data, because the governments have the responsibility to host it responsibly. Now, the question is for us in Estonia twofold, I think. One is that for any kind of secure data storage, you would need to have it duplicated or have it in 3 places, but then you would also need geographic distance. But Estonia is so small, so that's why we created a data embassy in Luxembourg, to have a bit of distance. And the recognition of this need also came from Fukushima, where during the catastrophe there, Japanese actually lost also some real data. So it's really a question also about natural disasters, and well, for us in Estonia, it's also about security, because we're living by Russia, and we will not change that. So we have to find new solutions. What I wanted to kind of point out as a second point, because of change of calculus, is that the question is also, how do you ensure kind of data integrity or cybersecurity there? At the same time, well, while the governments are quite good in securing their data, then actually it's one of the core services of these cloud companies. And they're doing it better in a way, because they wouldn't have any business otherwise. So it kind of creates this dilemma here, what to really do. But the question of sovereignty goes well beyond that. And we have seen now within the past couple of years that it is also about the access to kind of high-tech solutions, high-tech factories. I mean, we can talk about data storage, we can talk about the chips. It has really become so much more politicized. And with unpredictability coming also from the US, it's obvious that us also in the EU, we are now really focusing on how to build up European digital sovereignty, which is a difficult one, because we were globally, we were putting all the eggs in this globalization basket.
Yes.
And we were looking also towards China, that the production of different things is so much cheaper, it's more cost effective, let's do everything there. Now we see the results in a way. So the access to also rare earth minerals, different other kind of resources will be more and more politicized in the future. And I think this kind of this trend of having more politicized questions that used to be very technical, this is one of the biggest changes that I've seen.
For me, the discussion about the sovereignty is really a discussion about ownership and accountability in decision making and the planning and understanding. And this is something where I tell the people and the governments and their partners that I advise that this is something that you need to own, and you need to have your own way, your own path. It's very good to have collaborations. It's very important to share best practices, share experiences, and share solutions and the ways of doing it, but you actually have to own your own path. In the past, it has been maybe a bit more about, it's working well over there, we'll just copy it and we'll enable it the same way. Even more so, we'll actually have somebody from there come in and implement it for us. Now you have to actually be able to be technically more capable and understanding, but also having all the intricacies and the cybersecurity and the other aspects around it, to make sure that you actually own the conversation much more yourself. And then, fortunately, there are the different forums and different paths of actually sharing very good information, and using GovStack strategies, or using, as I said, the Tallinn mechanism in support Ukraine and things like this. So you have a lot of information at hand, but then putting that Lego together of what is right for your own country or for your own organization, that ownership it needs to be the sovereign ownership of the decisions.
In a way, I think we're lacking also a bit of interaction between kind of the tech evangelists and politicians. Um, in Europe today, it is clear that we have a huge dilemma in a sense that we need to move on faster with tech developments, but at the same time, we are at the trend of really spending more money on defense, which is all natural, and I fully agree with that. But this is really kind of political dilemma here, because we don't have infinite resources, and at the same time, we need to kind of keep up with the tech developments if we want to be relevant, and at the same time, we need to defend ourselves to even exist.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're saying that the war that Russia started against Ukraine, I mean, the full-scale war in 2022, is existential to Estonia. Yes, absolutely. But at the same time, our niche topic is digital and cyber. So if I go around, everybody asks me about these questions, and this is that still opens doors for us, and I mean, and also creates interest from so many other countries and organizations,
Absolutely.
even today. So even in terms of kind of assisting Ukraine, the harsh reality is that we're competing. I mean, money for rockets versus cybersecurity, and rockets still matter, and this is really saving lives.
Mm-hmm.
Cyber solutions can save lives, but the link is not so immediate. So it's a big kind of dilemma here. But as I said, it's a wider dilemma, and I do see the need for really more interaction between these tech visionists and
Yes.
politicians.
And it's also, one thing that it accelerates the discovery, and it accelerates the urgency, as as we've seen the developments in advancing on how fast the new drones and new drone technologies and new defense technologies are developed. The same thing is taking place in the digital space as well. And I think this is something that if before you had bit more time, or you could have a much more controlled and a little bit slower pace in advancing digitalization in different nations and things like this. I think having the wars in Ukraine and the situation in Gaza and with Iran and everything like this, that brings much more urgency in those discussions as well. So yes, and I do agree with the fact that having the kind of the very digital focus and digital society focus and digital society experience, for us as Estonians, it's a very interesting time to be here and to be kind of part of those conversations and be able to be a strong partner to many other countries and many other organizations. And now there are a couple different ways that I could go forward right now, because there's, with your background and the things that you're doing, there's so many different topics to cover. And one of the topics would be interesting to cover would be the collaboration with the Global South. And as you have experience from working with African Union, I spent a couple of years working with Smart Africa and working with GIZ in supporting with Smart Africa and all the different digital developments. So that's one area to go. The other avenue to go, that would be with your next post. That first, I want to congratulate you on your next post coming up, that you will be the ambassador to South Korea. And
Thank you.
The kind of avenue or approach that I would love to cover over there is that they're quite digitally advanced as well. So, when you have a discussion about the top 5 top digital societies in the world, usually Estonia is somewhere over there, South Korea is over there. Their approach now is quite a bit more from the infrastructure side, pushing 5G, 6G very hard, having people connected, doing very interesting thing from the trust standpoint as well. And I would love to actually have a bit of a discussion and understanding, or how much time have you had actually to kind of look at that future and what the collaboration would look like. Or maybe that's something that I will invite you back in 6 months or a year, and then we can have a more deeper discussion on that. And of course, I do want to actually come to the topic of the future and the AI and AGI and things like this as well. So I would almost say that which one would you like to go into next, the Global South discussion, or the discussion about South Korea and the collaboration between the advanced digital nations?
If I could start with Ethiopia,
Okay.
I'll give one example that is quite relevant and quite telling for me. But then I'll be happy to talk about Korea. When I was in Addis Ababa, then we got a request from one ministry of Ethiopia to help them with digital identity questions. I mean, Ethiopia is around 120 million people. Nobody actually knows how many people lives there, but that they were really keen on digitalizing different services. And while it was still COVID time, I managed to get one Estonian expert team to Ethiopia, and we also actually replied to the Ethiopian government positively, but we put certain kind of conditions also in place. And then came civil war, and I pulled the plug. I pulled the plug because I did not want to get Estonian institutions or companies in the middle of civil war in the sense that any identity questions become so much more sensitive
Mm-hmm.
when especially you have kind of tribe or nationality-based conflict. So I said, no, this is not, it could have been a really lucrative deal in the end for a lot of different companies, but I said, no, it's not worth it. So this kind of identity question, digitalization, I thought that example, at least for me, was extremely telling.
And that is also the level of one of the levels of trust that I kind of hinted at earlier. That it's actually the trust of how the systems will be utilized, how the knowledge will be utilized, and because with every technology, whether it's a hammer or anything else, there is always a possibility to use it for good. There is a possibility to use it for evil, and very many gray areas in between.
But I guess it's a question also of kind of the design phase. How to really build up? What's the architecture of your systems? If it really allows the governments to misuse it or not, and then how much do you trust the government that you have the deals with that they will not take this misuse path, and how can you be sure of that? Well, and how to actually balance that with your own kind of your country's business interests, the business diplomacy part there. This is quite an interesting part, a discussion that could be a whole another topic. But South Korea, well, I'm very eager to go there. I've been doing my job of cyber ambassador for 3.5 years, and I think this is kind of a very optimal time to move on. In terms of Korea's path, well, I think South Korea has done a marvelous job in terms of building up its high tech industry and really focusing on the kind of the edge technology part there. Telcos, of course, but South Korea could be also the major competition in terms of chip production. So they have the resources and knowledge, which is absolutely great. In terms of looking at what South Korea wants to do and what we could collaborate with, for this, I'm really waiting for the time when I go there. Because it's not something that you can read about. It's not something you talk over VTC. You have to feel it. You have to feel the kind of what the people want, what the government wants, and then see what are the opportunities. I might be very old school in that sense, but this kind of human touch here is extremely important.
I I would not say old school at all because this has actually been my experience as well, having lived in different places, and quite often I do get also questions that having experience with Africa and things like this. So how can we do business over there? Companies come to me and say how we can do business. I'm like, sure, there are great opportunities. There are very interesting things happening. There are big projects happening. Are you willing to move there? Oh no, we could do remotely. No, if you want to be part of a big change and big structural change, you need to be there. You need to be understanding the culture. You need to be actually kind of showing your own personal commitment, and also just having an understanding of what the real issues are and how to bring the change about it and things like this. So from that standpoint, I don't think it's old school at all. I think it's human nature and kind of organizational nature.
But South Korea is also interesting in that sense for Estonia. That usually I think we become a bit lazy also, thinking that we're so good and so advanced. South Korea will be now a country where I would go and see that some of the services are so much better, and some of the technical solutions are so much better. So, in my mind, I guess one of the tasks that's actually I'm not guessing it.
Hmm.
I know it. One of the tasks is to try to see what kind of technology I can also bring to Estonia. Um, so that we would be in a better place in the end. So
Hmm.
it's kind of reverse thing that we're usually used to actually.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to, it, and I'd love to have a discussion with you, in about a year's time, on the different approaches and then how kind of the combined approach it could be useful and beneficial, and also from the standpoint that one of the arguments that I've heard quite a bit is that of course Estonia you can do digital because you're so small. You have 1.3 million people. You can make those changes very quickly and all of this. But we are here 50 people, 50 million, 80 million more people. That it's just structure is so much more difficult. And having that experience on how actually, you know, South Korea is what is it 51 million if I'm correct, and how they are actually approaching the scale of digitalization, the scale of change, and having making that successful.
Well, of course, the investment is quite immense. I mean, the bigger country you have, the more services you need to implement, the more you have to invest. Um, and this is a scary part for many countries. But I would say that this, I've heard also many times that the same argument that you brought out, that is our solution scalable? I would say, of course it is. Again, the question is about political will. If you really want to go that path, because there's no way back.
Hmm.
One other kind of this slogan that I have is that we really cannot go back because we are so digitalized that we have cut all the bridges or burned all the bridges to go back to paper. It's physically impossible.
Yes.
So, are you ready to take that leap and really keep moving that direction? That's the question in the end, not the scalability.
Yes. I mean, it would be possible, but it would be extremely costly. It would be extremely cumbersome. It would be extremely inefficient. We would have to really start kind of restructuring the organizations again to bring in a whole lot of kind of steps into the processes that are not there because we just don't need to move paper around.
And no Estonian citizen would want that.
Yes,
That's
yes,
another part here.
yes. But before jumping into the kind of the interesting AI and AGI discussions, when you kind of look at the cyberspace right now and everything that you've seen over the last few years and last couple of decades, um, for you personally, which area is kind of the most exciting, and is there an area that is making you a bit uneasy that you're kind of keeping your eye on?
Hmm. already when I was in the US, I was surprised. I was surprised by one fact that when I went to one grocery store, I knew that they had one coffee that was more like the coffee we drink here in Estonia. And I'm quite a big coffee drinker, so that was important to me. I got that coffee, and then at exactly the right moment when I was thinking of buying another pack of the coffee, I got a ad to my email that buy from us this kind of coffee and exactly the same brand. That was a bit scary at that moment. And that was in, I think it was 2013 or something like that. So already 12 years ago. Now we are kind of, okay, I think we're all adjusted now. We just think that these kind of ads or ad emails or some other ads on some games, it's just spam for us. It's a nuisance. Um, the the what I'm really excited about is really these different opportunities that AI will give, and I mentioned before the kind of the medicine part here, where we could really find a kind of proper ways how to treat cancer or some other horrible diseases, or even avoid this. So this is really a massive thing, I think. Um, what really scares me? Yes, I could bring out autonomous weapon systems and all this. Really going to kind of Terminator context here, but I would say what I'm disappointed at. I mean, I would avoid the danger. What I'm disappointed at is that I keep thinking myself that we have such great technological advancements, but at the same time now we have almost record number of wars in the world. So I was always hoping that technology would help actually to avoid some of these conflicts. But no, rockets still matter, bullets still matter. That is what I'm disappointed at. So we should actually find ways how to use technology also for the sake of security. And here, I mean, you asked before about the global partners. I come back to the point that we cannot just think about ourselves. We need to engage them somehow, because otherwise we're just fueling some future conflicts with that.
Yes, I definitely share that disappointment and frustration. That I was a bit more hopeful and optimistic about the world a few years back, and that it has kind of gotten those brutal waves. But maybe that shows my naivete in those aspects. But in general, still, and I feel guilty having such a kind of nonchalant discussion about it, considering how close our friends and neighbors in Ukraine are, and what the situation is, and what the news are every day, and things like this. And at the same time, kind of looking at the bigger perspective, there is still, I think there is still hope, and I think the technological advancements and access to technology and access to knowledge, that will be the good influence on the world in general.
Well, yes, I absolutely agree with that. But at the same time, if you look, even with the advancement of mobile phones, I mean, this is absolutely great. We have almost supercomputers in our pockets. What we do mostly with that, we doom scroll. We just look at random stuff. We're not using these to really advance our knowledge, or we're not learning. Although we have a massive kind of learning machine in our pockets. So, and I do it myself also sometimes, just to if I need to kind of relax a bit. Yeah, I also scroll. But I think this it's not the way how we shoot technology. Actually, we're becoming lazy with that.
But how do you feel about the AI wave and the AGI wave that's either here or coming? Or I would even ask you that how do you define for yourself the artificial general intelligence, or what will be the moment for you when machine thinking bypasses us or passes us?
It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question in the sense that yes, I've also composed some songs with AI, or even for for our Christmas, I asked AI to compose one poem to receive my gift. Because in Estonia, you have to recite a poem to receive a gift, so you have to do something. I used AI for that, but that was more for fun for myself. Now, AGI. Look, what is my task today, and my department's task is really to make sure that the global governance of technology, including AI, is a human centric. Is that it creates transparency, is based on certain values, but the human has to be in the center. I mean, we're not talking about just random technology suddenly developing it itself. No, we're talking about technology that we humans are developing right now. So the question is, how do we develop it? And what are the values and principles that these are based on? So this is my job as a diplomat to really showcase what kind of values we need to adhere to. So whatever I say in terms of AGI in the future and what could be the impact, this is just my personal view. But and actually, I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm not sure we can really define the points of the 0 points where AGI will be more intelligent than us. I was a bit struck by the picture that MIT was publishing about the brain scans of people using AI and people not using AI. Well, I can't say if it was created by AI or not, but assuming that it was true, the comparison was massive. And if we start using AI really randomly for any kind of task or finding solutions to some problems, then this point comes much faster. But the question is, how do we really make sure that we don't develop now AI in order to earn more or have more kind of technical solutions or better technical supremacy? No, the question has to be, how do we develop AI so that it can be more useful for the people, for our benefits? This is the big question. It can't be just industry based. And here really governments as regulators come into play. And at the foreign ministry, obviously we're dealing with a kind of international environment, the UN and some other organizations where we talk about this. And also next week there will be AI summit in Geneva where our president will be there. So that already shows how much importance we give to that question. And also there, one of the main messages of our president will be this human-centric approach.
So that is an interesting discussion, and I'm a big proponent that AGI is coming very fast. Whether it's here or not, it's a matter of definition. In many cases, obviously, it's past us. In many cases, it's advancing and developing much faster than we can anticipate or understand. In many cases, it's still doing very stupid things that give a good opportunity to say that nah, it's not here yet. But in general, I think I make the distinction that I'm focusing in most of my activities these days to AGI readiness and supporting governments and supporting companies and the leadership of the companies and how to be ready for the AGI era, or ready for that time when it actually has bypassed us. And the distinction that I make is that when we talk about AI, we talk about it as technology, as tools, as something that we can utilize. That's something we drive and continue. When we talk about AGI, or the newer term is actually AMI, that advanced machine intelligence, that there is nothing artificial about it, that it's actually intelligence is intelligence. And that is actually that we have another intelligence coming to the table. And this is something that, in addition to what you're thinking and I'm thinking, that we actually have an AI that's equally smart and equally capable, or much, much more smart and capable. And how do we actually utilize that knowledge, that intelligence in our everyday activities, in the advancements in science, in the advancements of medicine, in the advancements of societal systems and everything like this. And I think this is kind of a very interesting conversation that needs to take place and needs to take place already in society.
Yes, absolutely. But I would add one more layer here, and again coming back to the global partners, because many countries are asking us also, what about kind of the bias in the systems right now? I mean, if we look kind of decades back, then sorry, then also the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, most of the medicine that you can get, it's for medium white guy. But what about the women who might need different doses of certain pills, but we have standardized the pill sizes? What about other nationalities, people living in different regions of the world? We're mostly the same, but we're still different. So the question of data bias really comes into play, and some of the global partners are even talking about data colonialism, that we keep taking their data, but we don't give anything back to them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that creates kind of this really uneven feeling from these countries. And be it justified or not justified, but this is the fact, what is happening on the international scene. So the big question is, for me now, is also this kind of AGI, or the 0 point. In which kind of geographical sense are you defining that? So I'm questioning.
For me, it's actually from the geographical standpoint, it's actually, I think the situation is that there is massive pure technological advancement, and this kind of a race to AGI. Obviously, the largest investment right now is US, and then the largest the competition and things like this. I think China is doing very exciting things in kind of bringing the scale and bringing down the cost, as DeepSeek and others, then Monos and other solutions have shown. And I think this is a very interesting picture. And in fact, I've been promoting one of the things that I think Estonia is once again in a very unique position over here, having really good and very well organized data, being very good at utilizing actual the innovation from elsewhere, and being very good in actually taking through that, or completing the difficult projects and the big projects that actually bring to societal change and organizational change, using that knowledge and that technological capability and all of this. But geographically, I think I'm actually feeling that the concept of the really different geographies as far as the intelligences is starting to disappear more and more, and it will be much more personalized. The medicine will be personalized. It will not be based on the fact that your age group or your race or where you're from. It will be more on actually what is your DNA. What is my DNA, etc. Of course, there are similarities in all of this, but whatever medicine you'll be taking or whatever ill you will be curing will be specifically for you.
Yes, but it comes from also the kind of the point where we are right now using AI to kind of solve our challenges. We're using AI. Yes, for climate, for example, climate change. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we're using all kinds of different tools, but in terms of local challenges, because we have the technology, we're using these for our challenges and less for other challenges where we don't have that technology. So in a sense, I do see the threat of some AI bias or data bias, but and also that will affect the development in the future for these countries. So I see the threat there, but at the same time, I'm still quite an optimist in terms of the possibilities that technology can bring with itself. So, in that sense, I'm quite hopeful, but slightly cautious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree that definitely the bias is there, and the bias in training data is there, and the responses and everything that you get. But at the same time, I'm quite optimistic that you know even today with the good prompting, you can say that take a different role or take a different perspective, and it enables actually to have much more personalized access and to satisfy your curiosities or the needs for the development and things like this. And that's something where I'm feeling quite optimistic. But in general, this is just a very limited segment of my interacting with certain language model or something like this. I think there is quite many different areas where we're not even sensing or we're underestimating. And one of the areas for me that's very exciting to follow is how much the utilization of AI and AGI will actually speed up the scientific development and advancement and research. And this is something how it's kind of creating this loop of how the life will becoming better and better, and the topics of abundance and solving all the world's serious problems, and how do we actually survive in this situation. We don't have to work that much, that we have much more free time. What will the humanity do, and how they will actually address and approach those questions. These are very very interesting areas.
Yeah, I mean, also the fears that AI will take all the jobs, and then what will we do, people? I think we need to kind of rethink the whole kind of employment markets.
Yes.
And we need to kind of adjust our own thinking that AI will be doing certain jobs. But then how can we use then this human intelligence for more creative jobs, for
Yes.
example? So we need this kind of mental shift here.
Yes. And also, what kind of societal changes that we can anticipate and need to see. How does our taxation system need to change? That when you have more people that are actually focusing on the areas that are not work anymore, that you're actually able to, whether it's the universal basic income, or how do we actually tax the GDP growth that's coming through robotics, that's coming through agents, that's coming through self-driving transportation, things
And
like
how can we also maintain local tax revenue in if you have most of the AI systems coming from
that. Yes.
some other countries?
Actually, when we were having this conversation, I was kind of thinking that, and kind of continuing stubbornly on the line of that new intelligence coming to the table and having the discussions. And I was thinking that maybe that's kind of could be your next post after 4 or 5 years in Korea, to be the ambassador to AGI or ambassador to AMI, to kind of bring those worlds together.
It sounds tempting, but I will take step by step, and I'll first try to finish my job in Korea.
Oh, absolutely.
First,
Absolutely.
I need to finish my job right now in Tallinn as cyber ambassador, and then go to Korea and so make sure that I do my best there. Um, but who knows how that will, how AI will also start changing the core diplomacy, and how do we interact also between countries. That might have some impacts, and I'm not sure many people are thinking about what kind of impacts there will be, but I'm sure there will be some.
Mhm. For me, actually, one of the experiences that I was also briefly had the pleasure and honor of working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and definitely not as a diplomat, not even a civil servant. I was a project manager on loan from the private sector, as at that point somebody liked to say over there. And one thing that was really a learning experience for me was the amount of memos that are being used and utilized. And I think there was even a saying that the memo is the number one tool of a diplomat. And then I think there is a lot of depth and truth of that. But one of the kind of the interesting thought exercises that I've had is considering the wealth of knowledge that is in the IT system somewhere in well, I think it was in the public folders or somewhere in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in form of all of those memos. You know, every meeting gets a memo for the preparation, then the meeting notes, then the kind of the assessment of the meetings, and all the knowledge that's there, to have a language model actually working through that, and in one hand, how much that can be a useful tool for preparation for any future diplomatic endeavor, and the other part is also how much of kind of insight and knowledge and depth that can come out of that information. That sounds a very interesting area for me.
And I think that is the path also for any foreign service. There are many foreign ministries that are already using some AI tools to kind of prepare some preparative documents, some overviews, um, and I think this is also the path for us. Again, the question is how to make your life more easy,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can really put your efforts into questions that really needs this human intelligence and or human touch. So to use technology to help us to kind of do these mundane jobs, absolutely. I'm so looking forward to it.
Yes, absolutely. But for me, it's not even just mundane jobs. It's the additional intelligence and insight that can come from there as well. I
Oh yeah,
know
absolutely.
utilizing being a daily user of ChatGPT and even using it a whole lot for preparing our discussion. And I know how efficiently I was able to learn so many new things, and how many new different insights, and in preparing for this discussion, and now having the human intelligent. I was about to say compliment, but it's not compliment, to actually uh, enforce or empower that knowledge that came from the artificial side has been a definite pleasure.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't sure that as an Estonian I would be able to talk so much,
Mhm.
that I have so many words, but but I guess I succeeded. So yeah, thanks for reminding me here.
Absolutely, and for me, just considering that we're in the middle of the summer in Estonia, and you're wrapping up one post, and then we'll be heading to Korea soon, and hopefully we'll have time to take a bit of a breather and enjoy the Estonian summer as well before you go. And I really appreciate you taking time coming to the podcast and having this discussion. Much appreciated, and congratulations one more time, Ambassador.
Thanks so much, and thanks for reminding me.